This is a demonstration of a program that I use to log samples in on orders that have quite a few different products on them. These are packaged products, and the way this works is each packaged product will be assigned a date code, which is the code associated with the blend that it actually filled from, or the batch that it filled from. And in some cases, like this one here, you can see that the date code, it could have different date codes assigned to the same product and the same shipment, but you're splitting the quantity. So here's 500, 240 are filled out of this date code, 260 out of that date code. That becomes a problem when you're trying to track down which batch information to use when you're making the certificate of analysis. So what I did was set up a special login form to accommodate that. And the way this works is you open up the form and enter in the order number. So we're going to use this order. And then just load the information from that order number. There's a table in the LIMS that has information copied from our order system. So we're going to load that information, and this is a different order number, and it has quite a few different products. So already I've saved time. The way this works as far as how it got all these date codes without me entering them based on what they used in the packaging department is it looks for the most recent date code and enters that automatically, and it will pull the most recent batch. We're going to assume that the most recent batch is used because they often fill out of the most recent batch. However, it's not uncommon, not terribly uncommon, for them to fill with old batches. So you can see right here, they may have written, they use date code 16188, and when I go to make a C of A for this sample after it's logged in, I'll have to track down the associated batch, and it ends up being really time consuming. So what I can do here is, and this is without even really looking at all those samples, is based on what they write on that order sheet, I can just go through and enter the date codes. So that one we're going to say has an older date code. I'll also use an older one here, so 16215. And then what this tool does, and I'll just go ahead and use an older one here too. What this tool does for me is it's going to look at the date code that I entered and go to the batch that precedes that date code. And the way that I make that happen is by clicking this Assign Batch Samples. It's going to take a moment because there's so many products on here. So as you can see, what happened there was the batch sample changed, the manufacture date changed, and the batch number changed. And you can see I now have the batch sample associated with 1215, which is 223025. Another thing I can do if I want to have some strange thing going on, so say they gave me the date code 1286, and that's fine with me, but for some crazy reason I want to pull the data from this batch. What I can do is select the batch and swap that sample out, and as you can see, that changed. And now that updates the manufacture date and the batch number. To prevent this action from being reversed when I go to assign batch samples, so if I have to change another date code or something, or all the date codes, and I want to assign the batch samples again, I have set up a flag. So if a sample is swapped, when I go to assign the batch samples, you'll see that this stays the same. And let me make it clear that that's working. So this is going to be 188. This one's going to switch. This one's the one that I swapped. Yep. And that one's not going to change. So this one will change right there. From here I can also, so you saw on the pick sheet here that they had this split date code for one product. The way I handle that with this program is I just make a copy of the row. So when I hit the plus button, it's actually going to copy all that information over. And when I do that, I can go ahead and say I want my quantity to be 125 of that batch and date code and 125 of a different batch and date code. So if they gave me date code we'll go with 1. See, now this is where they had a weird fill pattern. We're going to go with 16244. I'm going to assign the sample batches again, and this will be switched. So now that I'm all done with, making this all make sense, I can go ahead and log in the samples. I successfully logged in 11 shipment samples, and each of those samples is associated with the batch sample that we want to pull the data from for our certificate of analysis. This saves a tremendous amount of time. Sometimes a half hour on one order can be saved using this tool. And that's it for that overview.